There is something shifting quietly around you, something you may not be able to fully explain yet, but you can feel it if you pay attention. It's not loud, not obvious, not something that suddenly disrupts your day in a dramatic way. Instead, it's subtle. It shows up in small moments, in the way your thoughts pause for no clear reason, in the way a memory appears unexpectedly, in the way you feel like something is about to be revealed even though nothing has happened yet. This feeling is not random. It is connected to someone who has been thinking about you more than you realize. Not in a casual or passing way, but in a way that carries weight, reflection, and a growing sense of awareness. At first, they didn't recognize what they were feeling. It didn't come to them as regret immediately. It came as something much lighter, just a thought, a brief memory, a moment where your name or your presence crossed their mind without warning. They may have brushed it off at first, telling themselves it didn't mean anything, that it was just one of those random thoughts that come and go. But the difference this time was that it didn't go. It returned. And when something returns again and again without effort, it starts to demand attention. The more it returned, the more it began to shift from a simple thought into something deeper. They began to remember more, not just one moment, but many. Conversations, interactions, small details that once felt ordinary but now seem significant. The way you spoke, the way you listened, the way ideas flowed between you without effort. Before we dive into today's word, I want to thank our coffee partners. We are currently working toward a $120 goal to keep this ministry running and improve our quality. If this channel has been a blessing to you, please check the link in the description or comment box to support. Now, let's get into today's devotion. These are not things they stop to analyze at the time. When something feels natural, people rarely question it. They accept it as normal. But when that normal is no longer present, it begins to stand out. And that is exactly what is happening now. Your absence has created a space, and in that space, everything that once felt ordinary is now being seen with clarity. Silence has a way of doing that. It removes distraction. It removes routine. It removes the assumption that something will always be there. And when those things are gone, what remains is truth. They are beginning to see that truth now. At first, it may have felt confusing to them. They may not have understood why they were thinking about you so much, why certain memories felt stronger than they should, why your absence felt more noticeable than they expected. They may have tried to distract themselves, focusing on other things, other people, other responsibilities, hoping that the feeling would fade. But it didn't. Because this isn't something temporary. It is something real that is only now being fully understood. The more they think about it, the more they begin to recognize a pattern. It's not just one memory that stands out, it's many. And when many moments point in the same direction, it becomes clear that what they experienced with you was not random or replaceable. It had consistency, it had meaning, and it had a level of authenticity that is not easy to find. This is where the shift begins to deepen. It is no longer about remembering you. It is about understanding you. Understanding what the connection meant, understanding what was there, and most importantly, understanding what was lost. And that is where regret starts to form. Not all at once, not in a dramatic realization, but slowly, as awareness grows. They may begin to question themselves now. Why didn't they see it before? Why didn't they appreciate it more when it was present? Why did they assume there would always be time? These questions don't have immediate answers, but they create something important: reflection. And reflection is what turns awareness into regret. Because once someone sees clearly what they had and realizes it is no longer there in the same way, they cannot return to the state of not knowing. They can try to ignore it, but it will not disappear. It will continue to return, stronger each time, until it is acknowledged. You may not see any of this happening. From your perspective, everything may look unchanged. There may be no message, no direct sign, no clear indication that anything is different. But internal shifts rarely show themselves immediately. They build quietly, beneath the surface, until they reach a point where they can no longer stay hidden. And that is exactly where this is heading. What you are feeling right now, that subtle sense that something is about to be revealed, is connected to that process. Because as their awareness grows, it moves closer to becoming something visible, something you will be able to recognize, something that will no longer remain hidden behind silence. Right now, they are still in the stage of realization, still processing, still understanding what they didn't fully understand before. But they are no longer the same as they were when everything was normal. Their perspective has changed. Their awareness has deepened. And the way they see you is no longer casual or undefined. It is becoming clear. And once something becomes clear on that level, it does not stay quiet for long. As this awareness continues to deepen inside them, it begins to take on a stronger presence in their thoughts, no longer something they can dismiss or push aside, but something that stays with them throughout the day in a way that feels persistent and undeniable. What once appeared as occasional memories has now turned into something constant, something that follows them even when they try to focus on other things. They may find themselves drifting back to you without intention, replaying moments in their mind as if they are trying to understand them from a new perspective. And that is exactly what is happening. They are seeing everything differently now. Conversations that once felt simple now feel layered with meaning. Small details that seemed insignificant at the time now stand out clearly. The way you responded, the way you listened, the way you understood things without needing explanation, all of it is becoming more visible in their memory. This shift in perspective is what turns reflection into realization. And realization, when it grows strong enough, naturally leads to regret. Not because something terrible happened, but because something meaningful was not fully recognized when it was present. They may begin to notice that this feeling doesn't just come and go, it stays. It lingers in quiet moments, in pauses between tasks, in times when they are alone with their thoughts. And in those moments, the understanding becomes clearer. They start to see that what they had with you was not something that can be easily replaced or recreated. It had a natural flow, a sense of ease, and a depth that didn't require effort. And now, when they compare that to other interactions in their life, they begin to feel the difference. Conversations with others may feel less engaging, less natural, or lacking the same level of connection. Not because others are lacking, but because what they experienced with you set a certain standard they didn't realize at the time. And now that it's no longer there, that difference becomes impossible to ignore. This is where the emotional weight begins to grow. Because once someone recognizes the value of something they no longer have, they cannot simply move forward without acknowledging it. They may try to distract themselves, filling their time with activity, surrounding themselves with people, trying to keep their mind occupied so they don't have to think about it. But distraction does not erase awareness. It only delays it. And eventually, the moment comes when they have to sit with it, when there are no distractions left, when the thoughts return stronger than before. This is when the regret becomes more defined. It is no longer just a feeling, it becomes a realization tied to specific moments. They may begin to think about things they could have done differently, things they should have said, moments where they had the chance to express something but didn't. And with each of these reflections, the understanding deepens. They start to see their own role in how things unfolded. Not in a way that creates blame, but in a way that creates awareness. And awareness is what leads to change. Because once someone sees clearly what they missed, they begin to feel the need to correct it, to do something about it instead of just thinking about it. At the same time, this realization creates an internal tension. Because even though they now understand what they lost, acting on that understanding is not simple. It requires them to step into uncertainty. It requires them to face the possibility that things may not go back to how they were, that you may not respond in the way they hope, or that too much time has passed. And that uncertainty creates hesitation. They may find themselves going back and forth, one moment feeling certain that they should reach out, the next moment pulling back because they are unsure how to approach it. This internal conflict is part of the process. It is what happens when something truly matters. Because when something is important, the decision to act is never taken lightly. It carries risk, vulnerability, and the possibility of rejection. But even with this hesitation, the feeling does not go away. In fact, it becomes stronger. Because once regret reaches a certain level, it does not stay quiet. It begins to push for action. They may start imagining what it would be like to reconnect, how the conversation would begin, what they would say, how they would explain everything they have been feeling. These thoughts may feel uncertain, but they also feel necessary. Because doing nothing is starting to feel more uncomfortable than taking a risk. And that is where the shift begins. When the discomfort of silence becomes greater than the fear of action, everything changes. You may still not see any visible signs of this yet, but internally, they are no longer in the same place. They are moving from reflection into intention. They are no longer just thinking about what happened, they are beginning to think about what to do next. And that transition is important, because once someone begins to think in terms of action instead of just awareness, it is only a matter of time before something changes. The silence that once separated you is now becoming the very reason they feel pulled to return, not out of impulse, but out of understanding that has taken time to form and is now too strong to ignore. As this awareness continues to grow inside them, it begins to reach a level where it no longer feels like something they can manage quietly, and this is where everything starts to shift in a more intense and undeniable way. What once felt like thoughts they could control has now turned into something constant, something that follows them through their day, something that refuses to stay in the background. They may find themselves losing focus more often, getting distracted by memories, by small details that suddenly feel important. It's not just about remembering you anymore, it's about feeling the absence of what you brought into their life. And that feeling begins to show up in ways they didn't expect. It affects their mood, their energy, and even the way they interact with others. They may appear the same on the outside, continuing their routine, talking to people, moving through their day as usual. But internally, something has changed completely. They are no longer fully present in what they are doing, because part of their attention keeps returning to you. This is what happens when something meaningful is left unresolved. It doesn't fade, it lingers, it grows, and it continues to demand attention until it is acknowledged. At this stage, the realization has moved beyond simple awareness. It has become something emotional, something that carries weight. They are no longer just thinking about what they had with you, they are feeling what it meant. And feeling something on that level creates a kind of internal pressure that cannot stay contained forever. It is not loud or dramatic, but it is constant. It follows them in quiet moments, in pauses between tasks, in times when they are alone and have nothing to distract them. And in those moments, the truth becomes even clearer. They begin to understand that what they had with you was not something ordinary. It had depth, it had authenticity, and it had a natural flow that is difficult to find. And now, without it, everything feels slightly different. They may try to replace that feeling by engaging more with others, by seeking new interactions, by trying to create new connections. But instead of replacing it, those efforts only highlight the difference. Conversations may feel surface level compared to what they experienced with you. Interactions may feel less engaging, less meaningful. And this comparison is not something they are doing intentionally. It happens naturally, because once someone experiences a certain kind of connection, it becomes a reference point. And now, everything else is being measured against that reference. This is where the realization becomes undeniable. They can no longer tell themselves that what they had with you was simple or replaceable. They see clearly now that it was something different, something that stood out without them fully understanding it at the time. And realizing that they may have lost that creates a strong emotional response. Not just sadness, but regret. Regret for not seeing it sooner, regret for not appreciating it more, regret for not acting when they had the chance. These feelings begin to build on each other, creating a sense of urgency. They may start asking themselves deeper questions now. Why didn't they say what they felt when they had the chance? Why did they assume there would always be more time? Why did they let things become silent without trying to understand what was happening? These questions don't have immediate answers, but they serve an important purpose. They bring awareness to their own role in how things unfolded. And with that awareness comes a desire to change it, to do something differently now that they understand what they didn't before. This is where the internal pressure begins to turn into intention. It is no longer just about thinking or feeling. It is about wanting to act. But even at this stage, there is still hesitation. Because acting means stepping into uncertainty. It means not knowing how you will respond, not knowing whether things can be rebuilt, not knowing whether too much time has passed. And that uncertainty creates fear. But the difference now is that the fear of doing nothing is becoming stronger than the fear of taking that risk. They begin to feel that if they don't act, they may regret it even more. That they may always wonder what could have happened if they had tried. And that feeling is what begins to push them forward. You may not see this happening, but it is already shaping their next move. They are no longer passive in their thoughts. They are actively considering action, even if they have not taken it yet. They may start imagining what it would be like to reach out, how the conversation would begin, what they would say, how they would explain everything they have been feeling. These thoughts may feel overwhelming, because there is a lot they want to express, and they may not know how to say it in a simple way. But even with that uncertainty, the intention is there. And intention is the first step toward action. This is the stage where everything begins to move toward a decision. The silence that once kept them still is now pushing them forward. The absence that once created distance is now creating a pull, drawing them back toward something they now understand more clearly than ever before. And once someone reaches this point, it is only a matter of time before that internal shift becomes something visible, something real, something that changes everything between you. As everything inside them continues to build, it reaches a point where it can no longer remain hidden, and this is where the shift becomes stronger, more intense, and closer to turning into real action. Up until now, they have been processing everything internally, thinking, reflecting, going back and forth between hesitation and realization, trying to make sense of what they feel without having to express it. But emotions, when they reach a certain level of intensity, do not stay contained forever. They begin to push outward. They begin to demand expression. And that is exactly what is happening now. The silence that once felt like distance has now turned into something heavy, something that follows them constantly, something that reminds them every day that something important is unresolved. It is no longer just the absence of communication, it has become a presence of unanswered emotions. Every day that passes without action adds more weight to that feeling. They may begin to feel restless, unable to fully relax, unable to completely focus on anything for too long without their thoughts drifting back to you. It is as if something is unfinished, something is waiting, something that cannot be ignored any longer. This restlessness is not random. It is the result of everything they have been holding back finally reaching the surface. At this stage, they are no longer questioning whether they should do something, they are beginning to think about how they will do it. The decision to act is already forming clearly in their mind. What remains uncertain is the approach. They may start planning what they want to say, going over different possibilities, trying to find the right words that will express everything they have been feeling without creating confusion or misunderstanding. But this is not easy. Because what they feel is not simple. It is layered, built from memories, realizations, emotions, and even a sense of regret. Trying to put all of that into words feels overwhelming. They may write something and then delete it, feeling like it is not enough or not right. They may imagine different scenarios, different outcomes, different ways the conversation could unfold. This internal preparation may repeat multiple times, because they want to get it right. They understand that this moment matters. They know that whatever they do next could change everything. And that awareness makes them careful, but it does not stop them. Because even though they hesitate, the urge to act keeps growing stronger. The silence is no longer comfortable. It feels like avoidance. And they are starting to realize that avoiding it will not make the feeling disappear. It will only make it stronger. You may begin to notice subtle signs of this shift before anything direct happens. They may become more present in indirect ways, checking in quietly, showing curiosity, paying attention from a distance, or finding small ways to stay connected without fully stepping forward yet. These are early signs that the internal shift is beginning to show externally. They are testing the space, trying to understand how things might unfold if they take that next step. At the same time, their emotions are becoming clearer than ever. What once felt confusing is now defined. They know that what they feel is real. They know that the connection mattered. And they know that ignoring it is no longer an option. This clarity removes the biggest barrier they had before, uncertainty. And once uncertainty is gone, action becomes inevitable. It may still take a little time, but the direction is already set. They are no longer moving away from you. They are moving toward you, even if it is happening slowly at first. The intensity of what they are feeling may also surprise them. Because they may not have expected it to reach this level. They may not have realized how much your presence affected them until it was no longer there in the same way. And now that they see it clearly, it changes everything about how they view the situation. This is no longer something casual or temporary. It is something that requires attention, honesty, and courage. And that is why what they are about to do will not be small or insignificant. It will carry the weight of everything they have been holding inside. It may feel sudden when it happens, but it is not sudden at all. It is the result of everything that has been building over time. Right now, they are standing at the edge of that action. The hesitation is still there, but it is weakening with every passing moment. The realization is strong. The emotions are clear. And the need to act is becoming impossible to ignore. What comes next is not a question of if, it is a question of when, because they have already reached the point where staying silent is no longer something they can continue doing. Now everything inside them has reached a level where holding back no longer feels possible, and this is where the energy becomes intense, almost overwhelming, because what they have been suppressing for so long is now pushing to be expressed all at once. Up until this moment, they have tried to control it, to manage their thoughts, to delay action by telling themselves they needed more time, more clarity, or the perfect moment to say something. But emotions do not wait for perfect timing. When something meaningful is left unspoken for too long, it builds pressure, and that pressure eventually demands release. That is exactly where they are now. The silence that once felt like distance has now turned into urgency. It is no longer something they can sit with comfortably. It feels like something that needs to be broken, something that needs to be addressed before it turns into a permanent loss. And this is what shifts everything. They may suddenly feel a strong sense of clarity, as if all the thoughts they have been having finally come together into one undeniable truth: you matter to them more than they ever admitted, even to themselves. And once that truth becomes clear, it becomes impossible to ignore. This is the moment where hesitation begins to collapse. The fear of reaching out, the fear of being vulnerable, the fear of not knowing how you will respond. All of that still exists, but it is no longer stronger than the need to act. In fact, the fear of doing nothing has now become greater. Because doing nothing means accepting that this connection might fade completely, and they are no longer willing to let that happen without trying. This is the turning point. When someone becomes more afraid of losing something than of risking their comfort, action becomes inevitable. And that action may not look the way you expect. It may feel sudden, intense, or even out of character for them. Because when emotions build for a long time, they do not come out slowly or perfectly, they come out all at once, with intensity and urgency. This is why what they are about to do may feel crazy from your perspective. Not because it is irrational, but because it carries so much emotion that it breaks the pattern of how they usually behave. They may reach out in a way that is more direct than you have ever seen from them before. They may express things they once avoided, say things they never said, or take a step they once would have been too cautious to take. This is not random, it is the result of everything they have been holding back finally reaching the surface. At the same time, there is vulnerability beneath that action. Even if they appear confident or bold, there is uncertainty underneath. They do not know how you will respond. They do not know if the connection can be rebuilt or if too much time has passed. They do not know whether you feel the same way now as you did before. And that uncertainty creates risk. But they are willing to take that risk now, because staying silent feels like a bigger loss. You may also notice a difference in their energy when they reach out. There may be urgency in their words, a depth in their tone, a level of honesty that feels different from how they communicated before. This is because they are no longer holding back. They are no longer filtering everything through caution. They are expressing what they feel as it is, without trying to control how it appears. And that rawness is what makes the moment feel intense. It is not just communication, it is an emotional release. But this moment is not only about them. It is also about you. Because while they are acting from a place of built-up emotion, you are in a position where you can choose how to respond with clarity. You are not required to match their urgency. You are not required to react immediately or get pulled into the intensity of the moment. Your strength is in staying grounded, in understanding what is happening without losing your balance in it. Their action is the result of everything they have been holding inside. Your response does not need to come from the same place. You have the ability to observe, to process, and to respond in a way that aligns with your own clarity. And that is what will shape what happens next. This moment may feel unexpected, emotional, even overwhelming, but it is also a moment of truth. A moment where everything that was hidden is now visible. And once it becomes visible, it changes the direction of everything that follows. Now everything reaches the point where what has been building inside them finally crosses into reality, and this is where the situation truly transforms because the moment they act, the silence that once defined everything between you no longer exists in the same way. Up until now, everything has been happening within them, the thoughts, the memories, the realizations, the emotional pressure that kept growing with each passing day. But once they take that step, once they reach out or express what they have been holding back, all of that internal energy becomes external. It is no longer something they carry alone. It becomes something shared again, something that now exists between both of you. And that shift changes everything. What once felt distant and undefined now becomes real, present, and impossible to ignore. You may experience this moment as sudden, unexpected, or even overwhelming, especially if you had adjusted to the silence and no longer expected anything to change. But what feels sudden to you has been forming inside them for a long time. It has been building through repeated thoughts, through memories that refuse to fade, through realizations that became clearer with time. And now, it has reached a point where it could no longer stay hidden. When they finally express themselves, it may not come out perfectly. They may not have the exact words to explain everything clearly. They may struggle to organize what they feel because there is so much behind it. But what they show you will be real. It will carry the weight of everything they have been processing, everything they have been holding back, everything they now understand but didn't before. You may notice a difference in the way they communicate. There may be urgency, depth, and honesty that feels different from how they were before. This is because they are no longer approaching you from a place of uncertainty. They are approaching you from a place of realization. At the same time, this moment brings you into a position where your awareness becomes just as important as their action. Because while they are acting from emotional buildup, you are stepping into this situation from a place of clarity. You have experienced the silence differently. You have had time to reflect in your own way, to form your own understanding, to see the connection from a different perspective. And that means your response will not come from the same place as theirs. This is what allows you to remain grounded even when the moment feels intense. You may feel a rush of emotion when they reach out, surprise, curiosity, even confusion. But you are not required to respond immediately. You are not required to match their intensity or react based on the energy they bring. Instead, you can take a step back and understand what is really happening. Because what they are expressing is not just about the present moment, it is about everything that led up to it. It is about the realization they went through, the emotions they processed, and the clarity they reached before taking this step. When you understand that, the moment becomes easier to navigate. You may also begin to reflect on your own feelings in that moment. Because their action does not just reveal something about them, it reveals something about you. It shows you where you stand now, what you feel about the connection, and whether what they are expressing aligns with what you feel at this stage. You may realize that your perspective has changed during the silence. Or you may feel that something is still there, something worth exploring further. Either way, your response will come from your own clarity, not from their urgency. This is what makes this moment powerful. It is not just about their action, it is about your awareness meeting their realization. At the same time, there may be a temptation to respond quickly, especially if their words carry a lot of emotion. But this is where patience becomes important. You are not required to decide everything in one moment. You are allowed to take time, to process, to understand what this means for you before responding. Because the way you respond will shape what happens next. This is not a moment of pressure, it is a moment of choice. You are not being forced into anything. You are being given clarity, information, and an opportunity to respond in a way that aligns with your own understanding. And that is what defines this stage. It is no longer about what they will do. That part has already happened or is about to happen. It is about what you will do with what has been revealed. Because once the silence is broken and everything is out in the open, there is no going back to how things were before. The dynamic has changed. The truth is visible. And now, everything that follows will be shaped by the choices made in this exact moment. Now everything begins to settle into a deeper level of understanding, where the intensity that once surrounded this situation slowly transforms into clarity, and this is the point where you truly start to see what all of this was leading to. What once felt uncertain, confusing, and emotionally heavy is no longer something that controls you. Instead, it becomes something you can observe, something you can understand without being overwhelmed by it. The silence, the distance, the sudden realization on their side, and the action that followed, it all begins to make sense when you look at it from this perspective. You begin to see that this was never just about communication stopping or starting again. It was about what that silence revealed. It created space for them to recognize what they didn't fully understand before. It forced them to face emotions they had not acknowledged. And at the same time, it gave you space to step back, to detach from the constant interaction, and to develop your own awareness without being influenced by their presence. And now that everything has come forward, you are no longer standing in confusion. You are standing in clarity. You can now see the connection for what it truly is, not what it appeared to be before. You can understand the difference between what was assumed and what is real. And that clarity is what gives you power. Not power over them, not power over the situation, but power over your own choices. You are no longer reacting to something you do not understand. You are choosing based on something you now see clearly. The way they acted, the way they broke the silence, the intensity behind it, all of it now makes sense when you understand the process they went through. It was not sudden. It was built over time, through thoughts, memories, and realizations that gradually pushed them to a point where they could no longer stay silent. And now that they have acted, everything is out in the open. There is no more guessing, no more wondering what they feel or what they might do. That uncertainty is gone. And when uncertainty disappears, something else takes its place: clarity. You may now find yourself looking at the situation differently, seeing both sides in a way that you couldn't before. You can understand their journey, the realization, the hesitation, the build-up, and the eventual action. But you can also understand your own journey, the silence, the distance, the awareness you gained, and the perspective you developed during that time. And when you bring both of those understandings together, you reach a place where your decision is no longer based on emotion alone. It is based on truth. You may realize that what you feel now is not exactly the same as what you felt before. Time and distance have a way of changing perspective. You may feel that something is still there, something worth exploring now that everything is clear. Or you may feel that while the connection was real, it no longer fits in the same way it once did. Both of these realizations are valid, because what matters is not what existed in the past, it is what exists now. And this is where your power lies. You are not being pulled into a situation you do not understand. You are standing in a position where you can choose, based on clarity, not confusion. This is no longer about reacting to what they did. It is about deciding what you want to do with what has been revealed. You may also begin to feel a sense of calm replacing the intensity that once surrounded this situation. Not because everything is perfectly resolved, but because you are no longer uncertain. You are no longer questioning what this connection means or where it stands. You have seen it from both sides, and that understanding removes the confusion that once existed. And when confusion is removed, peace naturally follows. As you move forward from here, you carry something valuable with you. Not just the experience, but the awareness that came from it. You now understand how silence can reveal truth, how absence can create clarity, and how emotions that are left unspoken do not disappear, they grow until they are expressed. And this understanding will stay with you, shaping how you approach future connections, how you communicate, and how you recognize what is real and meaningful. This moment was not just about them breaking the silence. It was about both of you reaching a point where everything became clear. And now that it is clear, the next step is entirely yours, and whatever you choose will come not from confusion or pressure, but from a place of deep understanding that was built through everything you have just experienced. Now everything has reached its final stage, where what once felt uncertain, emotionally heavy, and filled with questions begins to settle into something clear, calm, and fully understood, and this is where you realize that the entire experience was not random, but necessary for both of you to see what could not have been seen before. The silence, the distance, the memories that resurfaced, the realization that grew inside them, and the action they finally took. All of it was part of a process that revealed something deeper than either of you had fully understood at the time. When everything was normal, when communication flowed easily, there was no reason to stop and question what the connection truly meant. It was simply there, existing without needing explanation. But the moment that changed, the moment silence entered, everything shifted. That absence created awareness. It removed the comfort that made things feel routine and replaced it with space. Space that forced reflection, both for them and for you. And now, standing at this point, you can see clearly what that space revealed. You can see how their feelings developed, how their understanding deepened, how their regret formed, and why they were ultimately pushed to act. But just as importantly, you can see your own transformation. You are not the same person who entered this silence. You have gained perspective, awareness, and the ability to see things without being controlled by emotion. And that is what makes this moment different from anything that came before. You are no longer reacting to something you do not understand. You are responding from a place of clarity. And that clarity gives you something powerful, the ability to choose your path without confusion. You may now look at the connection with a completely different perspective, one that is not influenced by assumptions or expectations, but grounded in what you have actually experienced and understood. You can recognize what was real, what was missing, and what has now been revealed. And with that recognition comes freedom, the freedom to decide what this connection means to you now. You are not being pulled by their emotions or by the intensity of the moment. You are standing in your own awareness, able to observe everything without losing your balance. You may realize that there is still something there, something worth exploring now that everything is clear and honest. Or you may realize that while the connection was meaningful, it belonged to a different time, a different version of both of you, and it no longer fits in the same way. Both of these realizations are valid, because the purpose of this moment was not to force a specific outcome. It was to bring truth to the surface. And once truth is visible, the outcome becomes your choice. You may also begin to understand something deeper about connections themselves, that timing plays a role, that awareness does not always come at the same moment for both people, and that sometimes distance is what allows truth to be seen clearly. This does not make the connection less real. In many ways, it makes it more real, because it has been tested, revealed, and understood in a way that simple, continuous interaction could never achieve. And this understanding is something you carry forward with you. It shapes how you see relationships, how you communicate, and how you recognize what is genuine and what is not. As you move forward from here, you do so with a sense of calm that replaces the intensity that once surrounded everything. Not because everything is perfectly resolved, but because you are no longer uncertain. You are no longer questioning what this connection means or where it stands. You have seen it from both sides, and that understanding removes the confusion that once existed. And when confusion is gone, peace begins to take its place. This is the true outcome of everything that has happened, not just their regret, not just their realization, but your clarity. Because clarity is what allows you to move forward without hesitation, without doubt, and without being influenced by emotions you do not fully understand. It allows you to trust yourself, to trust your perception, and to trust the decisions you make from this point onward. And that is what matters most. Because no matter what direction this situation takes, you are no longer in a place where things are happening to you without your understanding. You are in a place where you can see, choose, and move forward with confidence, knowing that whatever comes next will not be something uncertain. It will be something you have consciously decided based on everything you now understand.